This is a sports catastrophe production. Hey there, hello, ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond, and welcome you to another sports catastrophe on this day. And on this day, on March 26th, E-I-E-I-O, two famous NBA legends faced each other's collegians. E-I-E-I-O in the NCAA Finals of 1979. Michigan State, a great school. Indiana State, who cares about them? But they were going to be good players coming through the NBA in 1979. Magic versus Larry Bird. E-I-E-I-O. And man, what a game it was. The 1979 NCAA Tournament had 40 schools playing single elimination rounds. The championship game was in Salt Lake City, Utah, March 26, 1979, as I said. So it was 42 years ago. The funny thing about the 79 tournament is they had 40 teams. 78 had 32, and then in 1980 they jumped it to 48. So basically that was kind of weird. As you all should know, Michigan State took care of business, winning the national title against Indiana State 75-64. Indiana State was undefeated, trying to do what their predecessor, their state rivals, Indiana, had done 3 years prior. And spoiler alert, that will be part of an on this day coming up soon. Magic Johnson was named the most outstanding player, obviously. He helped Michigan State do fantastic. Michigan State finally got a win over a number one ranked team. And it remained its only victory over a number one ranked team till 2007 with Wisconsin. So anyway, it was a big rivalry between Magic and Larry and all that. It is the highest rated game in the history of collegiate basketball, which is amazing. Johnson and Bird would both hit the NBA in the fall of 79. Magic with LA, Bird with Boston. And there was a renaissance in the NBA getting the fans to watch the games in the 80s and 90s. And it led to the modern era of college basketball. It was introduced nationwide to a sport that was relegated to second-class status. Although, to be fair, the NCAA was big back in the 40s and 50s. It was actually higher precedence over pro basketball. Kind of like the way that the NIT was more famous in the NCAA tournament, but that turned out to be bad with point shaming and whatnot. Indiana State would become the first and only school that lost in this championship game to be the national runner-up in the NAIA tournaments, the NCAA Division II tournament, and the Division I tournament. This was the first tournament all teams were seeded by the Division I basketball committee. The top 6 seeds in each regional got by to the second round, and then there had to be 2 matchups, 7 versus 10 and 8 versus 9, to get into the tournament, to get into the regional quarterfinals and all that. It is actually the last Final Four played in an on-campus site, being at the University of Utah. The most recent tournament to be held on the premises, and basically, I know Mr. Doubter would say this, but anyway, not on the main campus, but on a satellite/branch campus, was in 1983 when New Mexico hosted the tournament at the Pit, which was on New Mexico's South Campus. It has, however, been played in a team's regular off-campus home arena twice since then. 1985 at Rupp Arena in Kentucky, and 96 at Continental Airlines Arena, which Seton Hall had as their home court. This is basically the last Final Four on a college campus. And this was the last tournament before 2019 that had 2 finals playing for the national championship for the first time. That basically Michigan State had never been to the finals, and now they did Indiana State. 2019 would be Virginia versus Auburn. And this was the first NCAA tournament that had 3 officials to games, not 2. So basically there were some huge things and all that. However, kind of like when I told you about the famous day on March 14th that 3 games ended in upset/buzzer beaters, this was also huge. The round of 32 in the Eastern bracket was known Black Sunday because of both North Carolina and Duke losing their matches. Well, North Carolina was the 1 seed in the East Regional, and Duke was number 2. Both were upset in Raleigh well, in their state of Carolina, North Carolina, as the University of Pennsylvania and St. John's University were the two teams that did it. Shockingly, Penn actually won the East Regional and got to the Final Four, losing to Michigan State in the Final Four, which was amazing. Like an Ivy League school in the Final Four, it happened. But of course, Penn and St. John's had to have played in a play-in game just to get to the regional quarterfinals. Penn had to beat 3 higher seed opponents to reach the Final Four, which was later bettered by LSU in 1986, Georgia Washington in 2006, and Virginia Commonwealth in 2011. But that was because, the tournament, the 79 tournament had 48 teams, whereas now it's 64. Well, 64 like 1985, and then they went with playing games earlier on. So anyway, in the East Regional, St. John's had to take down Temple, and Penn had to beat Iona, not Iowa, Iona, I-O-N-A, to get in. St. John's and Penn, surprisingly enough, even met in the regional finals. As we said, St. John's took care of number 2 Duke, but they also beat number 6 Rutgers. That's in the regional, of course, 67-65. What's even more messed up is that the 3 seed Georgetown Hoyas lost as well in the East region. So the top 3 seeds went down in the East region in their quarterfinals. As we said, Penn beat North Carolina, which was a shocker, 72-71. Penn then beat Syracuse, the 4 seed, in 1979, by the score of 84-76. So St. John's and Penn met for the Final Four, and Penn narrowly beat St. John's. Man, that would have been weird. A true Cinderella, in a sense. In the Mid-East region, Lamar University, which is really university, took care of Detroit, 95-87, whereas Tennessee beat Eastern Kentucky to get in. Lamar would have to face the 2 seed Michigan State Spartans, which was shocking. They weren't the number 1 seed in their own regional. But Michigan State crushed Lamar. They took care of LSU, 87-71, and beat the number 1 seed in the region, Notre Dame, in the regional final, 80-68. In the Midwest region, Weber State had to beat New Mexico State, and Virginia Tech took care of Jacksonville. My boys, Arkansas, were the 2 seed in the group. They took care of Weber, 74-63. They took care of Louisville, 73-62. Although a couple years later, Arkansas would also take care of Louisville and would have to take on Indiana State. Larry Bird and his squad first had to play Virginia Tech, which they beat by 17. And then they beat Oklahoma by more than 20 points. Arkansas had a chance to get to the Final Four at the expense of Larry Bird, but Bob Heaton scored a late second shot to sink Arkansas. In the West Regional, USC took care of Utah State, and Pepperdine had beat Utah to get into the regional quarterfinals, although the West region went according to plan. The 1 and 2 seeds were in the regional final. There were no upsets at all. Well, Pepperdine over Utah, but whatever. But then DePaul, as the 2 seed, shocked the number 1 seed UCLA Bruins 95-91 to get to the Final Four. DePaul, the school of George Mikan, all that. Michigan State crushed Penn 101-67. Penn was in at the worst possible time. Penn almost won the 3rd place game, but lost in overtime to DePaul. DePaul lost only by 2 points to Indiana State, and Michigan State took care of Indiana State in the final, as we know. So, yeah. It was a great tournament and all that. Bird versus Magic. And it's weird how that game would be the highest rated college basketball game ever. To this day. College basketball still was famous in the States, but I mean, it didn't hit the heights it should have. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.